Another hit Indian suspense film has exploded onto the scene. Rave reviews are pouring in. It's better than Drishyam, surpassing famous thrillers like Andhadhun. Dubbed the best suspense film in 5 years, with plot twists that are second to none. The use of montage and narrative tricks keeps the twists coming, with non-stop thrills. It's been nominated for Best Film at the 2020 Melbourne Film Festival. Dominated the ratings for 2 weeks straight. Scored a strong 8.6 on IMDb. Every viewer is raving about it. The first half is all set up for an intense second half. Leaving halfway through would be a pity for any suspense fan. No more talk. Let's dive into the story. Inside the police station, an uncooperative informant is getting a brutal lesson. As his cries fill the room, a serious-looking man walks in, claiming his house was robbed. His name is Maharaja, a barber. He has a habit of leaving his key under a vase outside. Last night, around 10 p.m., he came home from work, took the key and entered the house. Switched on the living room light, set down his bag, went to his room and took off his jacket. 3 burglars hiding inside suddenly attacked him. They knocked him out with an iron bar, and they stole his Lakshmi. What's Lakshmi? A trash can. Everyone there was stunned. They thought, is this guy nuts? Staying professional, the police asked him patiently, was there something valuable in the trash can? No. Important documents, maybe? No. There wasn't even any trash in it. Just a trash can worth 300 rupees. Seeing the police were about to get mad, Maharaja started telling a painful story. 17 years ago, he took time off from work, hoping to pick out a perfect gift. His wife and daughter were in the house across the street. But just as he chose a doll, a truck lost control and crashed into the house. He lost his wife in the accident. His daughter was miraculously saved by a falling trash can. She survived. 17 years later, Maharaja and his daughter Jyoti moved to a house in the suburbs. Jyoti grew into a beautiful young woman. Her dream was to become an athlete. Her gym teacher was very fond of her, always taking time to help her, sometimes helping her with her training, filling the void of her missing mother. All these years, Jyoti and Maharaja never forgot the trash can that saved her life. They placed it under her mother's shrine. They even named it Lakshmi. From then on, they lived like a family of 3. Every Friday, they'd bathe Lakshmi, apply holy ashen vermilion, and say their prayers. As usual, every morning they'd leave the key under the vase. One would go to school, the other to the barber shop. In the middle of the month, Maharaja would take a day off and take Jyoti shopping, or they'd go to the beach. Life was simple, yet peaceful. Occasionally, Jyoti would act all high and mighty, teaching Maharaja some life skills. Maharaja enjoyed it, feeling proud of how much his daughter knew. One time, the principal accused Jyoti of ruining the school's welcome event for officials and wanted to expel her. Knowing his daughter's nature, Maharaja was sure she was innocent. Sure enough, after the gym teacher did some digging, the real culprit turned out to be someone else. The principal casually withdrew the expulsion, but he forgot one key thing: apologizing to Jyoti for the false accusation. The principal owned over a dozen schools and colleges. There's no way he'd apologize to a student. He called security to kick them out. Maharaja grabbed a railing nearby, showing insane strength, nearly tearing it off. He almost ripped down a load-bearing wall. A dozen people couldn't stop him. But if that's the case, how did the 3 burglars manage to overpower Maharaja? Back to the story. The principal finally saw Maharaja's stubbornness. He sincerely apologized to Jyoti. That's Maharaja for you, a father who'd do anything for his daughter. Jyoti was heading out of town for a sports camp. It was a whole week, the longest they'd ever been apart. Jyoti gave him detailed instructions about everything. She reminded Maharaja to take pictures of Lakshmi every day. Then she boarded the school bus. That night, Maharaja came home from work as usual. There were no sounds of a struggle, but the room was clearly wrecked. Maharaja collapsed on the floor. Had he really been attacked? A cobra shattered a vase by the window. Maharaja woke up with a start. He didn't make it to the police station until morning. But after hearing his rambling, the police were convinced he was just causing trouble. They gave Maharaja a scolding and were ready to throw him out. But even all of them together couldn't budge the immensely strong Maharaja. He ended up destroying the police station's shelving unit. The rats on the shelves attracted the cobra. Maharu remained calm, and his ability to catch the snake bare-handed impressed the police. They decided to keep him until the chief returned. The chief was busy handling a theft case. 680 grams of gold had been stolen. The victim was a local official, earning 60,000 a month but living in a 70 million rupee mansion. The chief used this detail to create 680 grams of fake gold. He even had an informant pose as the thief. He threatened the official's daughter, saying if they didn't settle the case, he'd have her father's bank accounts thoroughly investigated. In reality, the chief had already found the real gold and pocketed it himself. All it took was some hush money for the informant's family. He boosted his case-solving rate and made a fortune a win-win. When the chief returned to the station, he was already frustrated by the chaotic scene. None of the colleagues were working anymore. They all gathered around, listening intently to Maharu tell his confusing story all over again. The chief decided to just calm things down. He pulled out 300 rupees to buy Maharu a new trash can, but Maharu insisted the police help him find the old one. He suddenly remembered that during the struggle, one of the burglars had his clothes torn by a metal hook. On his back, he had a stranger-like growth. The chief's blood pressure shot up. Everyone at the station was losing their patience. They all teamed up and finally managed to drag Maharu out of the station. This time, they didn't let him grab onto anything. But Maharu still refused to give up. He promised a reward of 500,000 rupees to anyone who could help him find his Lakshmi. He even gave a 50,000 rupee deposit, bribing them so openly unbelievable. The chief, furious, slapped him. Then he secretly ordered his men to pocket Maharu's deposit. They went back to Maharu's house to investigate. Those 3 burglars were very cautious. Other than the signs of forced entry, there were no other clues. One officer had a wild idea. Maybe Maharu was running some illegal business. Maybe the trash can held evidence of his crimes. Otherwise, how could you explain why he'd offer such a high reward? The chief discreetly asked Maharu what was so special about the trash can. But Maharu insisted that it was just an ordinary, completely ordinary trash can. He even raised the reward to 700,000 rupees. That got them to take it seriously. They started searching everywhere for Lakshmi using photos. Maharu even stopped going to work, sitting in the station every day, waiting for updates. Sometimes he'd run errands for the police, or help wash their cars without a word of complaint. He'd often zone out, watching videos Jyoti sent him, hoping the day would come when the culprits would be caught. Then, the station got a report from a man, saying his colleague, Dana, had been missing for 3 days. Looking at the photo of Dana in the man's hand, Maharu immediately remembered something he had hidden from the police. 3 nights ago, Maharu woke up startled by the sound of breaking glass. By chance, he saw a receipt for car repairs dropped by the thief. Following the car's license plate number, Maharu tracked down the car's owner at a luxury club. It turned out to be a powerful local politician. Before Maharu could ask who had repaired the car, a man stormed in angrily and beat the politician severely. Just when Maharu thought all hope was lost, the answer fell right into his lap. The man was the mechanic for the politician's car, and one of the 3 burglars, Dana. Maharu began tailing Dana as soon as he left the club. He followed him closely. Dana led him to an abandoned factory. There, his accomplices ambushed Maharu. Dana immediately recognized who he was and taunted him, saying he should have never held back. This enraged Maharu, and he once again demonstrated his extraordinary strength, beating Dana's accomplices mercilessly. His movements were swift, and his eyes were cold and emotionless. Even the ruthless Dana was a bit terrified by the scene. He tried to catch Maharu off guard and attack him, but minor injuries couldn't shake Maharu's unbreakable will. Dana was pressed against a factory machine, writhing in pain. Under Maharu's intense interrogation, Dana revealed information about the second burglar. He was a frequent visitor to the police station in Maharu's area. Dana saw a chance to escape while Maharu was distracted, but in a split second, Maharu reacted quickly, ending his deep-seated grudge. The reason Maharu went to the police station was to turn in one of the burglars hiding nearby. The police began investigating Dana's disappearance. They summoned the politician who had a grudge against Dana. He had taken his car to Dana's repair shop just for a day, but his expensive sunglasses were stolen from the car. The politician stormed into the shop for answers but got none. So, he beat up everyone present, including Dana, the mechanic responsible for the repairs. Dana had already been to prison multiple times for theft. It was Dana who stole the politician's sunglasses. But being humiliated in front of everyone stirred Dana's anger. Late that night, after leaving Maharu's house, he found the politician. He smashed the sunglasses right in front of him and beat him up severely. After being summoned to the police station, the politician remembered that before Dana attacked, another man had asked him about Dana. Maharu, sitting outside the office, nervously listened to the questioning. Luckily, the politician dealt with so many strangers daily that he couldn't remember Maharu's name. With his neck immobilized, he couldn't even look down to see who was sitting next to him. Maharu narrowly escaped being recognized. He continued searching the police station for the second burglar, often secretly checking people's backs. He would cross off those who weren't suspects on a notepad. Soon, the image of the culprit became clearer, and the truth was about to surface. The chief and his men still couldn't find any trace of Lakshmi. They came up with a plan. Why not just create an identical trash bin to prevent Maharu from noticing anything strange? They carefully studied photos and replicated every dent and rust spot on Lakshmi. Even a god wouldn't be able to tell it was a fake. Now, everything was ready except for one thing. They just needed a burglar willing to take the fall. But even thieves have their pride. They might take the blame for stealing gold or diamonds. But going to jail over a trash bin? Not even a dog would do that. As luck would have it, a police informant heard that the reward for this job was substantial. He volunteered to take on the dirty job. To make the act of taking the fall more convincing, the police asked Maharu to recreate the scene from the day of the crime. He complied, but although he was the one narrating the story, the person in his mind was not himself. It was Jyoti. The night of the incident was the very day Jyoti returned from her sports camp. She entered the house completely unguarded, put down her bag, and started changing in her room. She didn't notice 3 pairs of eyes watching her intently. One of them covered Jyoti's mouth, while the bearded leader held a metal rod and spat at Jyoti in contempt. Their cruelty was beyond words. Their plan was to ambush Maharu when he returned home, but the bearded man changed his mind. He wanted Maharu to stay alive, so he could witness the heart-wrenching scene himself. That would be the ultimate revenge. That night, Maharu had bought a new pair of shoes for Jyoti. The store's warehouse was 3 kilometers away, and it took him 15 minutes to pick them up. By the time he got home, it was too late. What he saw that night, he would never forget. Maharu hid everything about Jyoti from the police. Through tears, he kept repeating the same words. So close ... just a little closer, and she would have been dead. His demeanor made the police realize something was off. They were sure Maharu wasn't here, just because of a missing trash bin. The night of the incident, Maharu rushed Jyoti to the hospital. That's where he learned everything from her. Since she was little, Maharu had never refused any of Jyoti's requests. And this time, she wanted to face the ones who had hurt her and ask them why they did it. Maharu placed Lakshmi under Jyoti's hospital bed, hoping it would protect her again, just like it had when she was a child. After returning home, Maharu went into a frenzy, smashing everything in the house. Overcome with emotion, he collapsed to the ground. Back to the present moment. In a strange twist of fate, the informant who was supposed to take the fall turned out to be one of the 3 burglars. After hearing the case details, he panicked. It was clear Maharu was targeting him, but he couldn't back out after agreeing with the chief, so he reluctantly pretended to be an ignorant scapegoat. They returned to Maharu's house to reenact the break-in. The informant followed the description of the incident, going through the motions step by step. But when it came to covering Maharu's mouth, his hand naturally positioned itself at Jyoti's height. Though he quickly adjusted to Maharu's height, Maharu, being sharp-eyed, noticed a subtle movement. During Jyoti's struggle, she had felt a lump on one of the burglars' backs. Feigning an inquiry, Maharu grabbed the informant. Sure enough, the lump matched Jyoti's description. Maharu had caught him, but he wasn't in a hurry to have him convicted. A theft conviction would only get him 3 months in jail at most. He asked the chief to release the informant, but the chief asked a loaded question. Are you willing to forgive all of his crimes? As everyone was puzzled by the question, the chief's next words shocked Maharu. What about Jyoti? It turned out the chief had long suspected that Maharu's efforts weren't just about a trash bin. On the surface, he followed Maharaja's request, but secretly, he had his men investigate the full story. The chief didn't blame Maharaja for hiding the truth. Instead, he handed him a knife. He grabbed the informant, who tried to flee, accidentally tearing his shirt, revealing a lump on his back that looked like an ear. The chief then left Maharaja's house with his men. Someone asked if what he did was right. The chief replied, "If it were our family who suffered, would we stay silent?" Now, the only remaining burglar was the bearded leader. Before revealing the final big twist, let's revisit how the grudge between them started. The bearded man and his friend ran a small electrical company together. On the surface, they led ordinary lives, but in reality, they were the robbers the police had been hunting for. They would break into homes, stealing gold and jewels. After each robbery, they'd prepare dinner, brazenly eating in front of their victims, as if flaunting their victory. This time, their victims were a mother and daughter. The man of the house was often away, giving them an opportunity to strike. As usual, the friend cooked in the kitchen, while the bearded man looted everything valuable. Money alone wasn't enough for them. His friend didn't even spare the poor victims. After committing their crimes, they even set the house on fire. But even someone as ruthless as the bearded man had a weakness. He deeply loved his wife and their daughter, Amu. Every day when he got home, he'd bring Amu a new toy. Once, Amu was hurt by a falling cabinet. The bearded man immediately called someone to reinforce it. He personally applied medicine to Amu's wound. He was very careful with every single move, showing that he was a loving father. By the way, in his home, there was a trash bin identical to Lakshmi. It was exactly the same. Amu's second birthday was approaching. The bearded man spared no expense and ordered a diamond necklace for her. His wife had no idea about the bearded man's shady activities. She thought his small business was just doing well recently. The bearded man promised that money would never be a problem. Whatever Amu wanted, he would give her with both hands. This was a father's purest love. On Amu's birthday, the bearded man wanted to show up looking sharp. After picking up the necklace from the jewelry store, he went to the barbershop where Maharaja worked to trim his beard. Unfortunately, the razor ran out of power. Maharaja went to a nearby store to buy batteries. In the meantime, his friend called to warn him that all their robberies had made the news. The police were closing in on them. Just as the call ended, Maharaja returned to the barbershop. The bearded man kept wondering if Maharaja had overheard the conversation. When he got home, he realized the necklace was missing. Maharaja had found the necklace at the barbershop. Coincidentally, when the bearded man entered the shop, he overheard him talking about his daughter's birthday party in a nearby area. Out of a sense of honesty, Maharaja decided to personally return the necklace. He happened to run into the police investigating the robbery. They followed the lead and found the bearded man. Being arrested in front of his family was the last thing the bearded man wanted to happen. When his wife learned of all his heinous acts, she broke down. She screamed that she wanted to cut ties with him. She forbade him from ever seeing Amu again. The bearded man mistakenly thought Maharaja had overheard his phone call and reported him to the police. This planted the seed of resentment in his heart. He spent 17 years in prison before being released. He joined forces with the scumbags he met in jail to seek revenge on Maharaja. They wanted Maharaja to experience the deepest pain possible. Back to the present. Following the clues, Maharaja found the last thief. He attacked all the workers at his construction site, forcing him to show himself. When Maharaja realized it was the bearded man, he froze in shock. It was as if all the strength had been drained from him. He wanted to say something, but the bearded man didn't give him a chance to speak. Maharaja just let the bearded man unleash 17 years of bottled-up hatred. Until the bearded man mentioned Jyoti, Maharaja suddenly went mad. He lifted a stone, tears streaming down his face. But in the end, he couldn't bring himself to kill the bearded man. Jyoti contacted Maharaja and arrived at the construction site with her PE teacher. She could have become an athlete, but because of the bearded man's poison, she would struggle to walk for the rest of her life. Jyoti thought the bearded man attacked her for the gold. That's why he went after her. She threw the bag of gold to the ground. Facing her questioning, the bearded man was indifferent. He nastily replied, "If I'd known, I wouldn't have shown any mercy that day." Seeing he hadn't changed, Jyoti lost the will to ask anything more. She left, supported by Maharu. The bearded man reached for the gold, only to be surprised to find a necklace he knew all too well inside. It was the birthday gift he had bought for his daughter. It turned out, 17 years ago, after the bearded man was arrested, Maharu had thought about his wife and child being left without anyone. He went to help them, and he also returned the necklace. But the bearded man's wife refused to accept stolen goods. So Maharu went to the shop across the street to pick out a birthday gift for Amu. But then, an unexpected disaster struck. A truck crashed straight into the bearded man's house. Maharu lost his loved ones that day, but the fallen garbage bin protected the bearded man's daughter, Amu. She was the sole survivor of the accident. Afterward, Maharu renamed Amu as Jyoti and raised her as his own daughter. The bearded man looked at Jyoti as she walked away, noticing the scar on her back, just like Amu's. Everything suddenly became clear to him. But how could the bearded man accept that he had become the one who hurt Amu? He wanted to beg for forgiveness, but the memories of that night cut deep like a blade, piercing the softest part of his heart. Amu's footsteps were imprinted in the sand as she walked away. The bearded man looked at her one last time in despair. He lost his footing and fell from the construction site. The necklace fell beside him. Blood mixed with the footprints in the sand. It was all over. The title "Who Stole the Garbage Bin" could easily mislead people into thinking it's just a light-hearted comedy. But the Dobon title, Karma, better conveys to the audience that it's actually a suspense-filled revenge story. The movie opens by showing the inspector's incompetence, which leads to Maharu's distrust. He decides to offer a large reward for the garbage bin. This seemingly absurd story is what gets the police involved in the hunt for the culprit. The inspector, who hadn't been doing his job, suddenly becomes a champion of justice. This shift seems sudden, but the film's details had already given us clues. In the house that the bearded man robbed, there's a picture of the inspector on display. That crime was when the inspector lost his loved ones. That's why the inspector says the line, "If it were our family who suffered, would we stay silent?" There's another subtle element in the film, the cobra. When the snake forms a circle with its head and tail, it symbolizes cycles and rebirth. Its presence echoes the title, Karma. Good deeds lead to good outcomes, bad deeds to bad ones. When someone loses their conscience, they're bound to pay the price. Also, the cobra is a symbol of divinity in India. Here, it can be seen as a symbol of justice. The sudden appearance of a rat in the police station represents one of the thieves hiding there. The cobra can be seen as Maharu's counterpart. Just as Maharu follows the clues to the station, it's like a cobra chasing the scent of a rat. It's a very clever metaphor. It also explains why Maharu could handle the cobra without being attacked. They're one and the same. Let's talk about Lakshmi, the garbage bin that runs throughout the story. It's a common name in India. In Maharu's home, it's placed closest to his wife's shrine. It's speculated that this was the name of Maharu's deceased daughter. The garbage bin wasn't just a protector for Jyoti. It was also a symbol of Maharu's emotional support. In the original film, the director deliberately used montages and narrative tricks, shuffling the entire timeline and throwing in red herrings to confuse the audience. But that's the film's cleverest aspect. At first, viewers will definitely feel lost, unsure of what story is really being told. It's not until the final clues connect that the twists gradually reveal the truth. In that moment of realization, most viewers will be left speechless. We have to mention the lead actor here, Vijay Sethupathi. Compared to Amir Khan, who's a household name as a national treasure, Vijay Sethupathi isn't as well known on the international stage. But in India, he's considered a legendary actor. Whether in art house films or commercial cinema, he's garnered plenty of praise from audiences. This suspense film happens to be the 50th film of his career. The brilliance of a suspense film lies in its unexpected twist. In recent years, many suspense films have added twists just for the sake of it, spoiling the audience's expectations. It's become extremely difficult to craft a twist that's both logical and gripping. However, in this suspense film, even though the editing is deliberately chaotic, the solid and innovative script makes it truly impressive. I highly recommend watching the original film. The director's handling of the timeline and details is something no explanation can replace. But when searching, be careful of the title. There was another film released around the same time, with a nearly identical name. Many viewers watched the wrong movie, and gave this excellent suspense film the wrong rating. Otherwise, its actual rating would have long surpassed 8.5.